Well, welcome to our roundtable today. We're going to be discussing Black women in politics, culture, and business. And I am Marie Stroughter. I will be your moderator today. I am the co-founder of African American Conservatives, a former advisory board member for Black Voices for Trump, and I also work for the Republican Party of Texas. However, I'm not wearing any of those hats today. Today, I am your moderator for the Bright News discussion. And joining me today are State Representative Bernadine Kent and also Cecilia S. Johnson. Bernadine Kent, for well over 20 years, State Representative Bernadine Kennedy Kent of the 25th Ohio House District has lived her passion, first as a teacher and then as an assistant principal for Columbus City Schools, where in 1999 she was voted Educator of the Year. Because of her experience in education and advocating for children, Representative Kent, as a freshman legislator, introduced House Bill 137 to make peace officers mandated reporters of child abuse and neglect in Ohio. Ohio was the only state left where peace officers were not mandated reporters of child abuse and neglect. As a result of the bill becoming law, additional eyes are upon our most vulnerable children. Also with us is Cecilia S. Johnson. As the founder of Hood Conservatives, Cecilia Johnson has always been one step ahead of the crowd. In 2008, she read an article entitled "Why I Am a Black Republican" in a national Black magazine, and it led to her becoming heavily involved in her local political scene. She founded Hood Conservatives in 2012 as a joke, but soon realized that there was a need for a different perspective on minority outreach by conservatives. Aside from Hood Conservatives, she's a community activist, natural hair guru, stylist, and entrepreneur. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. A great opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for calling Cecilia S. Johnson.
Hi.
That's just how I know you, is just Cecilia S. It's always that little extra, you know? Okay, so the first thing we want to discuss is Black women in politics. I want to discuss what it means to be a Black conservative or Democrat, and should political affiliation have an impact on one's level of Blackness. Representative Kent, we'll start with you.
Okay, I cannot say necessarily what it means to be a Black conservative or a Democrat, because I saw the Democrat was in there because I am a Democrat and I'm a former state representative. I just know that I'm an individual and I try to operate on my own ideas, my own experiences, and my own views. And I always hope that helps me in my life. I am going to say this with regard to running for office. You know, you do find that you have to be affiliated with either Republican, most of the time, that you have to be affiliated with either Republicans or Democrats. I remember when I first ran for school board, I'm like, okay, I did not vote in the primary and therefore I was not in either party, but I needed to be in the Democratic Party in order to run with the party, because that's what most people vote. They'll either vote Republican or they'll vote Democrat. You can't even vote on a candidate in the primary unless you choose one of those parties, which is something that I didn't know before. Take, for example, Bernie Sanders. He runs as independent and does well running as independent in his area. But as you notice, when he ran for president, he ran as a Democrat. So I wanted to say you know about voting in your party. For example, with House Bill 137 to make police officers mandated reporters, when I talk about my experience, it was because of my experience advocating for 5 children in a family who I felt were being abused. When the family would call the police for domestic violence and had called them about 60 times over a number of years. And I got a copy of those calls. And what I noticed when they would call, the police would ask, is there a gun, or is there a knife, or is there a weapon of some sort in the house? But they never asked whether there were children in the house. So that's what made me realize when I was advocating that, okay, why aren't they noticing that they're being called, first of all, for domestic violence, and there are these small children or big children that are in the house, and they only really were focusing in on the man and woman arguing. Even if there's busted windows, she's a busted lip, it still did not focus them on them being exposed to abuse or possibly being abused. So when I got the opportunity to go to the State House, that's how that bill got introduced. It gave me that opportunity to say, hey, we need to make this a law so that we can have more eyes on our children, and police who will realize when they go to these domestic violence situations, you might want to be more aware of the children, because domestic violence in the household includes them also.
Thank you for your work on that important bill.
Thank you.
Cecilia, I'm going to turn it to you as a Black conservative.
Yeah, Representative, I want to thank you for your work as well. That's tremendous work. And those are things that definitely need to be done no matter what side of the aisle you're on. So I do truly thank you for being committed to that and making sure that we can protect our most valuable who can't protect themselves at all times. So being a Black conservative, it's a lot. It's a lot, especially a Black female conservative. That's a lot. But and I do identify as Republican. I've been Republican since I read that article and I aligned myself with the party, and I have done so even to this day. I serve as the vice chair for my state's Young Republican club or party or Young Republicans, Federation of Young Republicans. So I do identify as a Republican, and I think that the path that I chose to go as a Black Republican is the more vocal route, the more community activist route, the more and the more political route. So I have no desire to run for office or anything of that nature, but I do work on plenty of campaigns, work with plenty organizations, and just work to further my party in what I consider is my lane. So I do like to work to try to, educate people on the platform of the Republican Party. As you know, it's no secret, people in my community, I still live in inner city Kansas City. So people in my community, they aren't really being presented the idea of being a Republican from a Republican. So I really try to be that person and be that voice, and try to just grow the party in that aspect so that we can become the true tent that former President Reagan spoke about. I do also see, I'm a big fan of Malcolm X and his speeches, The Ballot or the Bullet. He talked, and there have been numerous people that talked about this, including oh my God, I can't believe her name, Zora Neale Hurston. She was a notorious, like a huge Republican and William Taft supporter. But they discussed the fact that, the Black community, the way that we can have real political power or get anything done, even if it's not widespread spreading political power. But the only thing to really get things done for our community is to be diverse in our vote. So I do work to educate people, even from that standpoint, that if we just side and allow ourselves to just align with one political party, we'll end up kind of like where we are now, where we don't really get things done for our community. So I do see that as a role for me, or for someone like me, on this side, to just be out, be vocal, work to expand my party. As far as how much of a role that plays on people's Blackness, I don't know. I don't. I've been told a lot of times that I'm not Black enough, or that, oh, you ain't really Black, or you just want to be white so bad. And I'm like, you got your nerve sitting here with some Asian woman's hair attached into your hair. So you got your nerve, number one. Number two, I don't believe that your blackness or your how you identify racially has anything to do with your political affiliation. Like I'm black, I was born black, I have a full black, 100% black experience, but not just a black experience. I mean, it's in my DNA. I mean, you see all this melanin drip. So just in case you're missing it, but I think that it is sad to see a lot of those kind of conversations or those kind of comments being made by Black people towards other Black people when we're supposed to be trying to climb the ladder together. And now it's even spilled over into the white community because we have the commander-in-chief telling me and people like me that we are not Black if we don't vote for a 77-year-old white man. So there's that.
You know, to your point, Cecilia, I really think that, you know, in this last presidential cycle, because there was so much vitriol and how people couldn't understand that I might support a president that had a very unique personality. I'll just leave it there and say that, you know, the conversations that I was able to have with people in my community as a Black woman, and one who espouses a conservative ideology, to be able to discuss some of these policy positions gave me the opportunity to help people understand that, you know, like you said, a lot of people think that it's associated with being a Republican is associated with whiteness. And I was like, I don't understand how that's possible, because for me, the issue of life and affirming life in the womb, when you talk about the eugenics of Margaret Sanger, or the fertility replacement theory, when you talk about how we're only 13% of the population. And in 1961, I think they said the population, that we've lost the population of what was Black America in 1961. Through abortion. And so when you talk about those sorts of things and tie it to our Blackness and understand that there are some things that we're going to have some feelings about when you talk about Tulsa and you talk about Black Wall Street and generational wealth. And me growing up in the 1960s and 70s in the Western Addition of San Francisco, I didn't know any other businesses but Black businesses. I didn't know other Black businesses. I mean, other businesses existed other than Black businesses. So getting back to that spirit of entrepreneurship and Tim Scott's enterprise zones and opportunity zones and those sorts of things, you know, tying those sorts of stakes and putting kind of a little mental bookmark for people to understand that there might be other reasons why people might affiliate with conservative ideology. And that doesn't make them any less Black. It means that we all are concerned about our communities and we're trying to engage in the best possible way for the outcome of our communities. And we may come at that differently, but that doesn't mean that we don't care or that we aren't invested in the success of the Black community. We're going to pivot now. Cecilia, did you have something? I'm sorry.
No. I thought you wanted me to add on. Nope, go ahead.
Okay. We're going to pivot a little bit and ask, is it better for Blacks to be loyal voting blocks to any one ideology or party, or should there be more diversity? Cecilia, we'll start with you.
So yeah, as I was just saying about Zora Neale Hurston's views and Malcolm X's when he spoke on his famous speech of the Ballot or the Bullet, where he discussed things of this nature. We are not going to be able to there's no political party power for anyone that just gives it up to the other side 90% of the time, which we do when it comes to, now our vote is becoming more diverse. President Trump got almost 20% of the Black vote, which is the first time that a Republican candidate had gotten double digits in the Black community in about 70 years. So we are seeing a shift and Black people becoming more open and coming out and saying, you know what, maybe I should take a look at both sides and give both sides a fair chance and a fair shot at getting my vote. And so I think that is something that is definitely moving in the right direction, as well as with the Republican Party and making tremendous strides as well, in not just outreach to the Black community, but showing that through policy and legislation as well, which
Yes.
President Trump did, and which I think was really the main reason he was successful in getting such a high percentage. But we have to diversify. We have to diversify our vote if we want to get things done. Because let's be honest, both sides have good ideas, and sometimes you need that from this party, and you need this little bit from this party. And the only way we're going to be able to do that and be able to command that kind of power, that kind of attention, is if we diversify our vote.
Agreed. Representative Kent.
Thank you. Again, I am totally in agreement with you with regard to that. And again, I am a person that can speak and try to speak from my own experiences. And I think that people aren't aware because I don't even, like, it is about parties, but I wish people would educate themselves to the candidates. And when I was running and I was out there, I was very shocked to see, because in Franklin County and in my city, when they're out at the voting booth at the polls, and they're at the poll where you can vote for a month, the Democrats have a sample ballot. And this is probably an 85% Democrat city. And they drink that sample ballot like they are drinking gold. They come out there and they say, I don't know whether you ladies, but it's like, where's the ballot? Where's that sample ballot? And they don't even realize that it's only about 8 people in a room that interview these Democratic candidates for these offices. And those 8 people then go to a group called Central Committee, which there is about 120 something, but they usually go along with just those 8 people. So you're thinking that you're making this wide decision, but really there are 8 people making that decision for you. So my hope is, because I did vote for Trump, because I went against the grain, and it was because, as you said, it was because of his policies, I could truly relate and understand what policies affected me and affected my community. So that was important. Plus, he's a hard worker. I like the fact that he understood how to connect the businesses and get the deal done. That was impressive to me. So I want to educate people to understand, who are you voting for? Please just don't vote Republican or Democrat, but just don't vote for a party. Look at the individuals, study the individuals. Most of them have websites. You can find out something about them and then make the decision on how it affects you as an individual or your family.
That's absolutely right. To touch on something that you talked about, Representative Kent, you mentioned businesses. There has been a debate around a lack of support for Black-owned businesses and the need to increase generational wealth, as we talked about a little earlier, in the Black community. Can enough of the Black community be mobilized for this strategy to become a viable social, economic, and political tool? Representative Kent, we'll start with you.
Thank you. You read that I previously was a teacher. I think that if we truly want to grow and succeed and be successful, we have to start with our children. And at one time, I remember in the school system, we tried to educate our children about careers. Then, of course, like everything else, you throw an idea out there, then it goes by the wayside, which means they must have gotten some public funds from it. And that's why they put it out there in the first place. But right now, our children don't know what careers are out there. They truly have no idea. They're not educated on financial literacy, which would help quite a bit. Because I remember when I bought my house for the first time at 30 years old, and I thought that that monthly payment was going to be forever. And I'm 30, and I thought it was going to be forever. I had no idea that it was going to grow. And these are things that our children need to be taught. They need to be taught how to invest. I mean, one teacher taught us class how to invest, and it was in, I think, Bitcoin, made millions of dollars for his school. It's things like that that we're not doing. We don't even understand, our children don't even understand all the careers that are available. And we need to look at that, and we need to seriously take time to make sure that they know what's available, to try to find out what their interests and their strengths are. That's what I thought testing was going to be about. But testing turned out to be just something that really hurt the urban schools and hurt children quite a bit. So for me, that would be what I would do with testing, not to punish anyone. It would be to see what our children's strengths are, what their interests are, and then to try to go from there, or teach them how to go from there to kind of expand their own research, because the world has so much information. I mean, thousands and thousands of information going through. So you could no longer say there's a book and we'll just teach out of that book. But in 2021, that's exactly what they're doing. And if it's not a book, it's a ditto. And I just think it's wrong. I think our children need to learn how to do research for themselves. So I feel like that will help us grow.
I absolutely agree. I'm a homeschooling mom. My youngest is about to graduate, but he did all the workbooks on, creating a budget, how to use credit wisely, those sorts of things. And to your point, that's absolutely right. I mean, it's needed in all communities, but in our community, we have to be able to teach our children those things. And having been a homeschooling mom and not seeing many families of color utilize that option, if that is an option for you. All three of my kids work in their fields. My oldest has a bachelor's degree in game design, and he is working for an educational software company. She's a Black woman who owns her own educational software company. And my son interned with her while he was in high school. He was dual enrolled in college and high school at the same time. We were homeschooling. And, she has been a mentor to him. And so now he works as a game designer for her firm. My daughter is doing an externship right now as a veterinary. She's trying to get her veterinary assistant certificate. And so she's working in a veterinarian's clinic. And my youngest worked for an animal rehabilitation center, wildlife rehabilitation center. He's got a bit of a cognitive delay, but it has been a game changer for him. And like you said, we have to give our children these opportunities and expose them to all career paths, right? Because my oldest son wants to be an entrepreneur. He wants to have his own video game company, make his own video games, all of these career options for our kids. And like you said, the financial literacy that goes along with it. So I think that's really important. That's a good point. Cecilia, what about you? Black businesses, our topic.
Absolutely. So I think that we do need to, I definitely agree with you guys, with you two ladies on that. We need to start exposing children to different career ideas, business ideas, and things of that nature. I do think that we do have to be a bit realistic about the things that are how our school system or education system has crippled Black children. It is very imperative that if you're going into a lot of the high earning positions, if you're going into technology and things of that nature, that you perform well in certain areas. Unfortunately, that's where our kids are performing the worst. So it's hard for them to, no matter how much you stand in front of them and say, hey, you can be a software engineer, you can do computer science, but if I can't do simple multiplication, then I can't see myself having that be in there. I can't see myself really working towards that and having that position if I don't feel like I am comfortable or confident in that area. If I don't feel like I'm good enough in that area to thrive and shine there. And we have so many minds in the Black community that are being wasted, that are being stripped of their potential, simply because we're not given a fair shot at education in our communities. At the school, my high school that I graduated from, only 12% of the kids are on grade level for English. And when it comes to math, 0.8% of the kids are on grade level for math. So there's no amount of exposing them to technology, jobs, and things like that, and these industries, if they can't perform, if they're being realistic, they're saying, well, hey, I could barely add. How can I ever do computer science? So I think that it's a lot of things in this conversation that must be had in order for us to succeed there. As far as business goes, I mean, the same thing. You know, there are a lot of components, there's a lot of hats you have to wear to be a successful business owner. It's not just, you know, open up a shop, starting, you know, selling burgers out of your kitchen and stuff. Like, it's a lot more that goes into that. So a lot of the I think confidence for things like that are being stripped away from our people, because they're not, they see that I am missing all of these holes. So who am I to think that I can go and be that? And we definitely have to change our education system if we're going to change the Black community, the wealth gap. If we're going to change Black-owned businesses for the better, we definitely need to make sure we're focused on our education first.
Absolutely.
Can I say, I'd like to say something to that, because I definitely understand what you're saying with regard to someone just standing in front of you. However, I was more so talking about our children having an opportunity to do internships. I was more so talking about actual business people coming in and taking a course. My sister is absolutely brilliant when it comes to finances. She wishes that I would listen to her, and I don't. But she would be the type of person that you come in, and teachers would have no problem with it, and teach a 6 weeks course in that teacher's classroom. As I said about internships, it's just very important. And with regard to the testing, if we would just concentrate, just as she said, they don't even know how to multiply. That's ridiculous that they don't know how to multiply. We need to focus in those first 6 years to make sure they know how to do the basics. It makes no sense to test them on history, on social studies in these tests. They need to know how to add, subtract, multiply, do divisions. They need to know how to write. They need to know how to read. If we truly, truly just focused on those things, then they would be ready when they get ready to start looking at different avenues of careers. And we're just not doing that.
I think we focus a lot on teaching to the test and not subject mastery.
Correct.
We really need subject mastery instead of just, okay, you know, that's our time on this. Now we need to move to the next thing. They're building blocks. You can't really build if you don't have the foundation. So, you know, to your point, that's absolutely right. I want to pivot for a moment as we talk about education. Cecilia, do you feel that the Black community is still being suppressed politically or socially? And how important is that critical race theory be taught at the primary grade school level?
You said, do I feel that we're being oppressed politically?
Suppressed politically or socially?
God, that's a good question. I didn't remember reading that one. I do in a different way. I do kind of think that we are, but I kind of think that we are our biggest threat is ourselves, you know, and just being curious enough to go out and to, you know, educate ourselves and make sure that we're educated on certain things, not just, you know, politics and things of that nature, but there's a world of knowledge, there's a world out there just ready to give you that knowledge if you want it. In a lot of ways. So I think that there's this, we do kind of stand in our own way at this point, whereas, you know, our ancestors, you know, they had other barriers in front of them that they definitely could not overcome, whereas we don't necessarily have those barriers in front of us that we can't just say, okay, well, I'm going to decide to do this and figure out, you know, how to replicate that in other people in our community. So I do think that is really, I think yes and no. I think that if a lot of it is just, you know, mindset. A lot of it is just, you know, being truly open-minded when it comes to these things and seeing that, you know, how I may be in my way when it comes to politics and things of that nature.
You know, you're absolutely right, Cecilia. one of the reasons I chose to homeschool was because as a Christian mother, I did not want to leave it up to anyone else to teach my children about the things that I felt were really important spiritually. You know, a lot of people say, don't just leave it up to the church to teach your children about God. You're supposed to be very involved. It was the same way with our history. I didn't trust the schools to teach my kids our history. A lot of people get Black history wrong. And this is, you know, I'm talking 15, 20 years ago. They teach it wrong. And I don't believe it's necessarily anyone else's job to teach our kids their history. We need to be teaching our kids their history. My kids have always known about, you know, you talked about Malcolm X and Zora Neale Hurston. You know, there's more than just, when you were growing up, wasn't it just Nat Turner and, you know, Harriet Tubman and Martin Luther King, and you studied that for Black History Month and called it good? I mean, my kids have known about, you know, other people in Black history. So I think that we need to take that mantle on. And now that it's all tied to wokeness and all of this kind of stuff, when we just need to stop and have a conversation, but people don't want to talk honestly about race. No. And I think that that's been a real detriment. Mm-hmm. So now there's this version of wokeness out there that we're talking about. And so white people are bad, Black people are bad. I mean, there are all these stereotypes that we're getting mixed in. So what is somebody like me who's biracial supposed to do? I mean, which half of me do I hate? I mean, that's just ridiculous, right?
No, as far as like when it comes to, you know, critical race theory, that's the new educational thing on the block. And I definitely am not in favor of critical race theory whatsoever. I don't think that it is right to teach people that these people are inherently bad, because we were just living in a world that was saying that about Black people not too long ago. And now, so I have to be consistent. I can't say that we should be saying that about other people's races. And I don't think that, I think we're ignoring kind of what that kind of conversation or those kind of terms and conversations have on the psyche of children, on the psyche of people. You have to, these kids are very impressionable at the age that they're learning this thing this way, and we're not being careful, and we're not understanding that those things can plant seeds of hate in children's minds as well.
That's right.
And it's just what we just came from, what we're trying to get away from as a country.
That's right. Representative Kent.
Thank you. And I totally agree with the two of you with regard to the critical race theory. First of all, it is absolutely too polarizing. And there is no way you should put something so polarizing into your school. You're only going to cause problems between those children, and they don't really have the maturity yet.
Right.
We've already said their brains are not fully developed yet. So you put such a polarizing issue in those schools, that's ridiculous. I do believe it needs to be left to the parent, or you can allow the children to go and research, because what happened to research, so that they can research their own history, read the books that they choose to read that speaks to them. And my father always, and as far as us being suppressed, is so very difficult for me. My father always said, baby girl, titles don't mean nothing to me. If they can't make it rain, they're just like you and me. And I've always taken that to mind, because my father couldn't read. My mother only went to the 3rd grade, but they bought a home. They raised 5 children. All 5 of us graduated from high school. 2 of us went on to college. And I never heard them talk about or come home and talk about the white man. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's like, we just have to do what we need to do. I always tell, because I advocate for parents. My husband and I have a parent advocates for kids in school group, and it's just the 2 of us. But I've always told parents, you really have to deal with your own individual needs first, and then your families. And, when you do that, you'll be fine, because you're going to have jerks out here. We find ourselves wondering, well, I found myself wondering, well, are they doing it because I'm Black? Well, you can drive yourself crazy trying to figure out why someone's a jerk. My whole thing is all of us have our biases. And I tell parents, you have to find out what the rules are. What is the rules, what the rules are in the school? What's the policies? What are the policies of corporations if you have a complaint? And I'll just give you, a really quick story. When I was advocating for a 7th grader, he was in gym and he had kicked a volleyball and it hit the teacher in the head and the students laughed. I guess that offended her because she sent him to the office and like 5 minutes later, the police came and arrested him and took him to juvenile jail, and he was in there for a weekend. So I began advocating for that family because that's horrible and that was wrong, because the policy is that you call the parent and the police policy was that you turn the child over to the parent. So when I started advocating, I said to the mother, you should go to the school, and because they're trying to say there's all these witness statements, so you should go to school and get those witness statements. So they promised her the witness statements. So she goes to the school and she said she was going to the school, and then I didn't hear from her for about 3 days. So I called her and I said, well, did you get, those statements? And she said, girl, they gave me this manila envelope and there wasn't nothing in it that had to do with the witness statements. And I just said to her, you know what? I bet if you went to McDonald's and you ordered 2 hamburgers and you came home with only 1, I can guarantee you would call back to get that other hamburger you paid for. And so I want people to understand our services from the government is no different from the services that we request from businesses. If it's in writing, if that's your rule, that's what I expect because that's what I'm paying for.
That's right. This is our last topic for today. There's been a lot of discussion on the appropriateness of bonnets and headscarves in the public square and hairstyles in the workplace. What are your thoughts? And what do you think this debate says towards the perception of the Black community? And we'll start with you, Representative Kent.
That's very short for me because I don't think it's anyone's business whether someone wears a bonnet on their head. It's the silliest argument I've ever heard of. I mean, they're not like they paid for it, so therefore that's their right to wear it. You're not paying their bills. They're not harming you. So why are we even having this discussion? It's absolutely shameful. And it's just the kind of same thing when we try to have these discussions around rappers that were making millions of dollars. You didn't think that this is what's helping them make millions of dollars and get out of what they considered the hood. You focus in on just the most ridiculous things. And then you focus in, it's just like the saggy pants. That really hurt us a lot when they focused in on saggy pants, or they focused in on gangs. When they focused in on gangs, we actually had a high school that told the students they couldn't wear the color red. They didn't care if it was a beret. You couldn't have the color red. Those are the kind of things that happen when you focus on things that really don't matter in the large scheme of things with regard to what people need.
Cecilia?
I have a love-hate just for this relationship with this conversation because a part of me, I find it very interesting just hearing everyone's opinions and stuff about it. I do think that there is a sense of decorum. There's a sense of style, and there's a sense of carrying yourself. And I do think that wearing not just a bonnet, like I guess because I'm more of a dressier person. So I usually go places and I am about 60% of the time, I'm the most dressed person in the room because I just like to dress up. I like to, that's what it is when I come out. I've never worn a bonnet outside, even when I'm wearing just workout clothes and stuff like that. But I do think that some things should be reserved for the house, and when you're ready to step out, like you get yourself together and you step out. I don't think that I do think that it does impact, you know, the opinion of what people perceive of us when they see us and things like that, things of that nature. And I am mindful of that. I know people may, I mean, I respect your opinion. I definitely value your opinion, Representative, but I do think that we do, as a community, especially of women who are, you know, oftentimes are more likely nowadays leading families and things like that. I do think that there is a respectability that we as a people should aspire to get back to. If you look at people when they were, you know, advocating for us to have equal rights in all aspects of it, you know, I don't know how they did it. They were out here in 90-degree heat in 3-piece suits. I have tremendous respect for that. And they still were like, okay, we're gonna melt, so we're gonna be done when we're done with this day. But they still had a sensibility. They still knew how important appearance was, and I do wish that, you know, we kind of got back to that a little bit more and being more mindful of that.
You know, I kind of fall a little bit in the middle because there's a part of me, you know, my oldest son has longer hair. It's short now, but shorter. But at one point he had twists, and some things were said, and it was hard for me not to go Mama Grizzly in 0 to 60, right? Because I'm thinking, yeah, that's my kid. I know his hair is clean. I know it's, you know, but that's his choice. You know, and like you said, Representative Kent, it's kind of like nobody's business really how, you know, how he wears his hair. But to your point, Cecilia, you know, you're clean and respectable. But it does kind of hearken some of those older conversations, you know, to this day, I don't like people touching my hair, you know, patting my hair. It's kind of like my hair is unique. You know, you don't touch the black hair. I'm sorry. It's one of those things, you know. So, you know, I feel for people because I feel like they should be able to express themselves how they wish to. You know, some people dye their hair purple. That's their business. And as you said, there may be consequences to that. You know, some employer may say, you know, that's not for me and for my business. And that's their right to say. But at the same time, you know, you can express yourself how you wish to express yourself, but within the bonds of decorum, as you mentioned, Cecilia. I think that that's an appropriate thing to think about. But at the same time, you know, it's funny because on Facebook, it was like your memories, you know, that thing that comes up. And so 10 years ago, because today's my son's 23rd birthday, happy birthday, son. He had gone to camp, I think, and he had a little red mohawk. And so I used to let my kid, it was temporary dye, couldn't have it in church, had to wash it out the night before. But if you wanted to have your hair blue, if you wanted to have your hair whatever, you could for camp, you could do whatever you wanted to. But there were some rules and some boundaries around that. Our time, unfortunately, is up. I want to thank our guests today. I want to thank former Representative Bernadine Kent for being our guest today, and Cecilia S. Johnson. This is a moderated discussion by Bright News, and we hope that you will sign up for the newsletter at www.brightnews.com. That's www.brightnews.com. And again, our thanks to Cecilia S. Johnson and Representative Bernadine Kent. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.